I feel like my content is entering that late 2010s, early 2020s Disney type of era when all I feel like making are sequels and remakes. Because this, of course, is a follow-up to my first video about the mystery health condition I've been suffering from since August 2024. And the reason this follow-up video is necessary is because the theory I ended the previous video with is very likely incorrect. This video will probably be long and drawn out and not straight to the point because I will over-explain the context for my current theories. But before I restate my previous theories, let me reiterate my symptoms for context. In mid-August 2024, about 2 weeks after I ran in the San Francisco Marathon, I started getting seemingly random episodes of nausea about 30 minutes into some of my walks. The nausea became more frequent and happened increasingly earlier during my walks to the point where I couldn't even walk 5 minutes without it. This eventually halted basically all of my outdoor activities, and as of the release of this video, it's been about 4 months since I've been able to reliably walk even one city block without nausea. And throughout this period, I've had additional symptoms when I'm at rest. These include a 2-week period in late August when I experienced headaches and chest pains. Then there was a period in mid-September when it felt like I was fighting a full body infection, leading to an ER visit where they of course found nothing wrong with me and told me I probably just get migraines, even though I had no prior history of getting them. My condition remains a complete mystery to every medical professional I've interacted with. I've had multiple blood tests, a CT scan of my head, multiple EKGs, and even an echocardiogram of my heart. Everything came out normal.
An MRI, EKG, X-ray, laser beam.
So, in the previous video, the primary theories I discussed were anemia and hyponatremia. Anemia was my first theory because I had recently ran a marathon and thought that maybe I ravaged my iron levels due to a combination of endurance training, resistance training, and the fact that I don't go out of my way to reach conventional fitness community standard minimums of protein. The anemia theory was incorrect because my protein and iron levels were actually on the higher end based on an at-home test I ordered. The hyponatremia theory was the theory I eventually settled on due to my secondary symptoms improving significantly when I shifted my hydration habits to prioritize electrolytes over fluid volume. This led to a week in mid-October when it felt like I was finally turning a corner and improving. And as I mentioned in the San Francisco Mega Vlog sequel, I went on a few nighttime runs that actually felt pretty good, and I even went on a few nighttime photo walks that lasted 45 minutes to an hour. But then on the night I went out to capture the Transamerica Building light show, the nausea hit me like a ton of bricks, probably 20 to 30 minutes into that walk, which completely destroyed the confidence I gained from the longer night walks earlier that week. The suffering I felt trying to inch my way back to my apartment was enough to spook me out of going on any more extended walks for the year, but I continued running because somehow the symptoms were never as bad when I ran. But then I started feeling bad during the runs, and the feeling kept happening progressively earlier during the runs too, to the point where I gave up on those in early November. Not surprisingly, this is when I began having serious doubts about the hyponatremia theory. Because I consider myself an evidence-based person, which means that if my theory is correct and I'm taking the proper steps going forward based on that theory, then I shouldn't be having setbacks that are this significant. At this point, early November, I didn't see myself doing much outdoors for the foreseeable future, so I ordered a treadmill. And since then, I've been doing regular walks of 30 to 70 minutes on the treadmill with nothing more than minor dull headaches. So I'm somehow able to walk on the treadmill indefinitely, but not outside for more than a few minutes? That's obviously strange, but it's an important data point for my eventual theory, which I promise I will get to. I'm still building up to it. So in the entire month of November and the first half of December, I only attempted one run. It was a night run in late November, and I made it several blocks before I felt awful and had to turn around and come back. The next run I attempted was a night in mid-December when I went on a safe run, where I would just run around my block as many times as I felt comfortable. I made it about 3/4 around my block before I felt uncomfortable enough to quit, so I returned to my apartment after just one lap. As I headed toward my shower intending to just give up and go to bed, I got one of those sort of it can't be like this moments that I think all of us face at some point. Like an athlete in a major competition who sees himself getting humiliated en route to a certain loss and realizes he can't go out like this. Sure, he's aware that he will probably still lose, but not without at least putting up a fight first. So, while still wearing my running clothes, I hopped on my treadmill. I turned it on, revved it past the 3.2 miles per hour setting I use for my walks, and set it to 6 miles per hour. Several minutes go by, no symptoms. 15 minutes go by, no symptoms. At 30 minutes, I'm actually feeling pretty good. I ended that treadmill run at the 60-minute mark with no issue. This treadmill run convinced me to shift my focus to one of the two theories I was playing with at the time, because the night of that treadmill run also happened to be the night I concluded an experiment for one of the two theories. The theory I had just concluded the experiment for was the sunscreen chemical theory. Here's some background for how I came up with it. Recall that October was the month when my body said, "You're getting better," followed a week later by, "Just kidding, you need to find more straws to grasp at." This led me to re-examine seemingly innocuous things I could be doing on a regular basis I was previously unaware could be harming me. At some point I had another one of those catalyst thoughts where I suddenly remembered past experiences in recent years when I experienced nausea I either couldn't explain or just attributed to other things. The first memory was my trip to Las Vegas around New Year's heading into 2023, which I made a video series about. The night I got there, I experienced a seemingly random episode of nausea while walking the strip, so I hurried back to my hotel. After returning to my room, I drank a bottle of water and felt fine within minutes, leading me to believe I may have just been dehydrated from the 8-hour drive. I had other random episodes of nausea while in the theaters in summer 2023 watching Barbie on its opening day, and again while walking home from a Giants game in 2024. In my mind, the thing that tied all of these events together was that they were all days in which I most definitely applied sunscreen multiple times. The Las Vegas trip happened not long after I first began wearing sunscreen daily. I also recall having more unexplained digestive issues in the second half of 2023, not long after I switched from SPF 50 to SPF 100 based on my Amazon purchase history. So, of course, I did a deep dive on sunscreen chemicals. I found that chemical sunscreens usually contain several of the half dozen to a dozen chemicals that are considered potentially harmful. Admittedly, I don't know if the potential harm of these chemicals is greater than the potential harm of not wearing sunscreen at all, but it's just good to know about these chemicals and why some of them are banned in places like Hawaii, Australia, and Europe. Not only are some of these chemicals known to be harmful to reefs, I've read quite a few sources indicating that these chemicals are potential endocrine and hormone disruptors. These chemicals get absorbed into the bloodstream, and an FDA study published to the journal called JAMA says that, after initial absorption, the concentration of the 6 chemicals in the blood increased each day of application and remained above FDA safety levels at day 7, well after application had ended. 2 of the chemicals, homosalate and oxybenzone, were still above safety thresholds at day 21. Based on the timing of switching from SPF 50 to SPF 100 in 2023 and the subsequent digestive issues, I singled out oxybenzone as the most likely chemical that could be causing me problems due to it only being present in my SPF 100 sunscreens. On Friday, November 22nd, I began an experiment. I went without wearing sunscreen for a day. That same day, I noticed a significant increase in the amount of plain water I could drink without needing to add electrolytes. Every day for the 2+ months leading up to that day, I believe something like 75 to 90% of my fluid intake included electrolytes because drinking more than a few ounces of plain water triggered symptoms at rest. I repeated these no sunscreen days over that weekend, and just a few days in, I was back to drinking almost entirely plain water with no symptoms at rest, and in fact, I actually felt slightly worse consuming electrolytes. This led me to believe I might have stumbled upon something here. I decided I would go 21 days without wearing sunscreen. So, from Friday the 22nd of November to Friday the 13th of December, I went 22 straight days without wearing sunscreen. During this experiment, I didn't see any improvement in my ability to walk outside without nausea. That, combined with this sunscreen experiment coincidentally concluding on the day I successfully ran an hour on the treadmill, I realized the sunscreen is likely not the primary issue. So, since then, I've returned to using daily sunscreen, but switched to SPF 30 due to its low concentration of chemicals, its absence of oxybenzone, and the fact that someone with my skin tone probably does not need an SPF higher than 30 if I'm not going outside for an extended period. That finally brings me to my current theory as of the release of this video. Throughout 2024, I've tweaked my neck at least a few times during my resistance training, and this always happens during the bicep part of the workout. I never thought anything of it because it seemed to just cause a temporarily sore neck. But then I realized that the soreness is not actually temporary. I have a chronically sore neck due to the number of times I've strained it while doing heavy bicep curls, and these strains increase in frequency each time I increase the resistance. I've increased the weight on my bicep curls at least a few times over the years just due to seeing better results. And I recall the last big increase in my bicep curl weight being not long after I ran in that July 2024 marathon, because post-marathon I intended to shift my fitness goals a bit from performance towards aesthetics. So, of course, my next Hail Mary was to look up any connection between nausea and neck issues, which led me to the topics of cervicogenic headaches and cervicogenic dizziness, and it's very possible I'm suffering from both of those. Cervicogenic refers to symptoms that originate in your cervical spine, which is the part of the spine that's in your neck. A cervicogenic headache is a type of headache that develops due to a problem in your neck. It can trigger migraine symptoms such as pain in the face or head, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, blurred vision, nausea, or vomiting. Cervicogenic dizziness, also known as cervical vertigo, is a condition in which you experience both neck pain and dizziness. Symptoms may include dizziness, a sensation of floating, lightheadedness, lack of coordination or unsteadiness, balance problems, posture changes, visual symptoms, nausea and vomiting, neck pain or tightness, and headaches. Both cervicogenic headaches and cervicogenic dizziness are caused by injuries or conditions that affect your cervical spine or neck. Things like arthritis, bone fractures, pinched nerves, inflammation, muscle strain, or joint issues. Personally, I have had a chronically sore neck for, I would say, a good chunk of the past year. And who knows how many times in the past year I've had a sore neck and just ignored it because the pain just was never enough to pay attention to. The National Library of Medicine has this long jargon-filled article about cervicogenic dizziness that pretty much sums up my speculation for what could be happening to me, particularly the last paragraph of section 2.3. I'll read the first sentence verbatim because it's fairly straightforward, and then I'll summarize the rest of the paragraph because it's full of anatomical jargon. The first sentence says, cervicogenic dizziness is often accompanied by autonomic nervous disorder symptoms such as palpitations, nausea, and vomiting. And the rest of the paragraph basically states that a sensory mismatch between your inner ear, eyes, and neck can cause cardiovascular and gastrointestinal symptoms. There's also one other annoying symptom that's more evidence for my latest theory, which is that in addition to not being able to walk more than a few minutes without nausea, I am not able to ride in a vehicle for more than a few minutes without nausea. Yet I can walk and run on a treadmill indefinitely, which means that my symptoms seem to only be triggered by forward motion. I have emailed this theory to my doctor. He responded by asking me how the appointment went with the cardiologist he recommended. This is referring to a phone appointment I had with this cardiologist in November to discuss the results of an echocardiogram I took that same month. The cardiologist told me the same thing that's been told to me by every other cardiologist recommended to me by heart-obsessed primary care physicians. He told me that there's nothing he saw in my results that concerned him, especially from someone who ran 2 marathons in the past year. The cardiologist also mentioned that the only thing he noticed was a slightly enlarged heart, which is probably just athlete's heart due to being very active. And, most importantly, the cardiologist recommended I see a neurologist, which is just a reiteration of an opinion I already had months before speaking with the cardiologist. So, when I responded to my doctor's question about how the appointment with the cardiologist went, I told him everything the cardiologist told me. That was December 27th, and as of this video, I haven't received a response, which means I probably need to seek a doctor who will take this issue more seriously. Admittedly, I'm not exactly in a hurry to seek medical intervention for a number of reasons. The first is that I've already taken some of my own steps to mitigate the neck issues. I've lowered the weight on my bicep curls to below the neck straining threshold, and that was after completely taking a week off from lifting. And yes, I'm open to temporarily removing that exercise if I don't see improvements in the next few weeks. I've also ordered massage balls to keep the neck muscles loose throughout the day. In the several weeks since I've made these changes, the past 2 walks I've done around my block aren't as awful as they usually are. I'm still getting uncomfortable symptoms, but they haven't hit me like a ton of bricks like they have previously, so that's something promising to monitor as I continue self-treatment. And just making it 1 lap around a full city block is promising because in late November, I couldn't even make it to the end of my block. The second reason I'm not in a hurry to seek medical attention is because doctors aren't exactly magicians, as this 4-month ordeal has reminded me over and over again. Don't even get me started on the Reddit threads I found of people who had unexplained symptoms for years while bouncing around between countless doctors because their blood tests, MRIs, etc. indicated that there was nothing wrong with them until a doctor finally discovered that it was a neck issue. And to be fair to doctors, it feels like the medical field is still in its infancy regarding issues related to the neck and spine. This is why after so many people fall off of horses and break their necks, modern medicine is just like, I guess you can't walk again? If there is a reason to seek medical attention sooner rather than later, it's to access medical equipment that can show me if and where there is structural damage in my neck, so treatment can be more targeted if necessary. But whether or not I'm seen by a doctor soon, the treatments seem pretty basic. The treatments I found are basically just physical therapy and or pain medication for mild to moderate cases, along with just waiting months for the issue to go away. There's also surgery, which is the last resort. But seeing Peyton Manning win an MVP and a Super Bowl after recovering from 2 neck surgeries is also promising.
And you're not only talking about a neck injury, you're talking about a neck injury for a guy in his mid-30s.
Oh, and it goes without saying that seeing a doctor isn't exactly easy when you can't walk or ride in a vehicle for more than a few minutes unless the hospital is on your block.